Welcome to the Exam Study Expert Podcast, helping you ace your exams at school and university through the psychology of high performance and the science of studying smarter, not harder. It's my pleasure to introduce your host, the Cambridge-trained memory psychologist and exam success coach, William Wadsworth.
Hello and welcome to the show. My guest today is a non-traditional student and aspiring neurologist, Erika, who shares her story of overcoming setbacks and challenges. In this episode, you'll learn all about the power of resilience through difficult personal and family circumstances, as well as how to cultivate a growth mindset and overcome beliefs that may be limiting your academic potential. Really, really important and powerful topics, and really nice to have the case study from Erika about how they've all played out in the real world for her. As well as being a current student, Erika is also something of an influencer herself. So if you like her vibe today, do go and find her on the socials and drop her a follow. And now let's meet Erika and dive right into her story.
So hi, my name is Erika Grace. I'm a non-traditional med student on my journey to becoming a neurologist. I've always been a curious person. So I love learning new things. In high school, I joined pretty much every single after-school activity, club, just trying things out to see where my interests were, where I didn't have any interest in. And I spent time I bought college level anatomy and physiology textbooks. So that just shows you where my mindset was of, I was just so interested in how the human body works in medicine. And as I dove more in, I realized I'll never forget when I was about 16 or 17, I came down to a decision point and I was like, okay, do I want to study? Because I realized I had to focus my interest in an area, or I just felt I had to. And it came down to neurology or cardiology. So I started diving more into both areas because I thought those were both the two main components of the human body. And of course, not taking anything away from anyone else in any other area of the body. But for me, I felt those were the two most important. And the more I dove into the brain, it just sparked my curiosity as to how it controls everything, how it makes us who we are, how, a heart, you can have a heart transplant and save somebody's life. I was like, but you can't do a brain transplant and save somebody's life. A brain is very personal to who we are and makes us us. So in high school, that's just what I started doing, started learning habits and learning that there's always so much more to learn, and the way you look at the world around you shapes how you're going to adapt and overcome circumstances, right? I knew, even though at the time I was like, I have no idea how I'm going to get to school, what my life ahead holds for me, right? It's one of those things, you never know the journey ahead. You can only see the dots looking backwards and connect the journey. But I just believe that no matter what, if I just approached everything, had an idea of where I wanted to go, things were going to start to line up. Vice other people I found that are some of my friends, and I always encourage them, you look at life and think it's just like a fixed state, oh no, I've got this job and I'm just stuck here forever. I can't go after my dreams of being a dancer or something. And that always was the furthest thing from my mindset of, if I want to do something, just to pour into it and keep going after it, that there is no limit, and we can tie in a little bit of the neuroscience. It's fascinating that how the brain works. If you set your mind on something, you'll start looking for your brain literally start looking for things without you even realizing it for how you can accomplish that. And that is just so powerful to me.
So I think we're touching on the concept of fixed versus growth mindset here, aren't we?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about kind of what that is and why it's so helpful and important to know about.
Sadly, I think a lot of people have fixed mindsets. I think people have growth mindsets, but I think a lot more people in our day and age have a fixed mindset. And all that means is that a fixed mindset is you think an example, it's you woke up today and you want to go to your favorite coffee shop and it's closed. And instead of thinking, okay, where's the next coffee shop? Can I stop on my way to work? Maybe I can order ahead, finding a solution to the problem. A fixed mindset is you look at the first obstacle you come across as just shutting down your entire objective, shutting down your goal, shutting down whatever you are trying to do. Whereas, like I said, a growth mindset is looking at it, okay, darn it, this is my favorite coffee shop. Or maybe for tea in England, I don't think you do coffee
We're
in the
big into
morning.
coffee. We're big into coffee shops here
Okay.
too now.
But being like, oh no, this is my favorite one, but that's okay. Today is just today. Tomorrow it will be back. And in the meantime, to get my coffee fix for the morning, where's the next closest shop, right? Where can I stop along the way? How can I find something? Maybe I'll let my boss know and, hey, I'm going to be a few minutes late. Do you want a coffee? Like, finding a solution to this problem is the difference between growth and fix. And I understand a coffee example is very, very simple, but if you have that mindset, it starts to steamroll into other parts of people's lives, right? This is when people get very upset for sitting in traffic and not being able to get where they want right now, and understanding like, it's okay. Like, traffic happens, maybe there's an alternative route. Maybe you can call ahead. Now, for next time. A fixed mindset is not being able to look at something as a problem that needs a solution, is looking at a problem as it's a barrier and it just shuts down you from moving any way forward. And that can be really detrimental if you want to grow in life, you want goals, you want more, you want to accomplish more, which I think everybody should want. A lot of people want more for their family, more for their career. But if you have the mindset of, I'm just here at this job, or we just live in this house, or whatever the example is, you're not setting your brain up for success to look like I already touched upon a little bit, that your brain will start to find these things for you without you even having to do really any work. You just need to encourage it to tell it like, this is what I would like to go after, and be open to that creative thinking. And it's just fascinating how our brain loves puzzles, and it loves stories, and it is always searching for a solution to a problem if we foster it. Which, on the health side, I'll quickly do a little plug too. I think it can also, when we have a fixed mindset, lead to other problems. Personally, I think it makes us start to feel unwell, because then we kind of feel trapped. We feel like we can't go anywhere. And I don't think there's a worse feeling than thinking like, this is it, If you go to the coffee shop and then it's closed, and then thinking like, this is it, it's the end of the world, then it's, I don't think, a good place to mentally be in, right? Because that starts to trickle into every other aspect of a person's life. By being like, oh, that's okay. You know what? I really love this, but there's another coffee shop nearby. Let me go there, and keep your day moving forward. But so often we tell ourselves, again, stories of saying like, oh, this isn't the same as it was before. I don't know. I'll just do enough to get by. Like, I'm sure I can do just enough to get by. Like, I'll figure it out. Whereas if we shift that saying and say, no, I'm amazing at this. I've got this. I'm going to excel at this. I'm going to learn this. I'm going to be the best in the class, right? And maybe you won't end up being the best in the class, but if you shift your mind and tell your mind that, things will start to come, I don't want to say necessarily easier to you, right? You still have to put in the time. You still have to put in the study habits, the techniques, and actually learn the material. But when you empower your mind to feel that this is something you can do, it's going to become a lot easier.
So it all flows from getting that core belief straightened out, that this is something I can tackle, this is something I can do. Like, specifically, how do we go about identifying a limiting belief and changing that story?
You need to take account of what you're feeding your mind, right? I know it almost sounds silly a lot of the times I say this, and not everyone gets it, because we always think of feeding as in like a physical food, but like, what are you listening to? Like, do you listen to the news all the time? Are you listening to podcasts? If so, what types of podcasts? Who are the people you're spending time with? And really take inventory of, how do they talk about themselves? How do they talk to and about you? What are you guys talking about? And I understand this sometimes is a touchy subject for people, because they're like, oh, it's like, my brother-in-law, he's like not the most positive person, and he's kind of mean to me. So like, but I can't cut him out of my life. And it doesn't come with maybe cutting people out of their lives, but being aware, if you have to go in that situation, really then telling yourself how much, again, the positive talk ahead of time, telling yourself, it's okay. No matter what he says, it's not true. It's not true. It's not true before and after your interaction with this person, because you don't want to absorb it and leave there thinking all of these things. If we're just picking on this random person's brother-in-law that I made up, okay, like that, like if they're like telling you all of these things of like, oh, why do you want to become a doctor? Why do you want to become a neuroscientist? Like, who do you think you are? You'll start to internalize those thoughts if you listen to other people telling you those things. And then that's where it will trickle down to when you're in class and be like, oh man, yeah, you're right. Like, this is kind of challenging. I don't know if I can do this. This is really hard. And if you start to have those thoughts and self-doubt, those things will hold you back. They will start to spiral. That will start to become your fixed mindset of thinking like, yeah, you're right. Because what's going to happen is you're going to go to a test then and we're like, I don't know if I can do this. You're not going to do well. And then your mind's going to interpret it as proof of like, see, you maybe shouldn't be on this path. Instead of understanding you have the power to shift that mindset and say, no, this is what I want. This is what I'm going to go after. I can do this. I will do this. That person's wrong. I'm not going to let their words influence me. Do well on the test and be like, yes, see, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to do. Or like, okay, maybe I didn't do as well as I wanted to do. That's okay. This was just one exam. The next one I'm going to do so much better on. I've got this. I know I can say this and it sounds almost easy sometimes. And I understand it's not necessarily that easy because our thoughts are powerful. And the other thing I would add in, you have to keep in mind too how long you've allowed these thoughts to fester in your mind, because a little bit on the neuroscience side, the more times we think about things, the more times we hear things, those create neural pathways in our brain. And the more times, repetition is amazing. So that's why I said, like, I repeat over and over again, like, this is what I want. This is what I'm going to do. I'm worthy. Whatever the words are, working with somebody to tell them during the day, saying it over and over and over again starts to create a neural pathway in your brain. So you believe it. It's easier to go down that pathway because you've created it so many times. But just like that, if you always hear these negative things and think you can't do it, those are also going to create pathways. And your brain is going to go down the pathway that you use the most. So knowing that, you have a choice. But if you've been listening to this negative thought of like, you can't do this for your whole life, right? We'll go with somebody maybe later in life and wants to go back to school, say 50. For 50 years, you've been saying, hearing, telling yourself you can't do this. It's a lot harder to change your habits and your ways than someone who's maybe in their 20s and who's in college and, you know, starting off on a new adventure. Can you do it? Absolutely. But it's going to take a little bit more. Normally it takes like a really, like something of a pain point that you're finally just so flustered that you want something more than you've already had those pathways in. And will it be completely easy? I'm not going to say it's going to be easy because that's a relative term. That easy for everyone's a little bit different. Do you have to put in the work? Absolutely. And it's going to take just that habits and repetition of retraining your brain in what you want and what you want to think. And that's why it's important you do this every single day. I love to correlate mindset to working out, that it's not like there's an end state where you're like, okay, amazing. I'm done with my mindset training. I'm good for the rest of my life, right? It's something that you have to continuously work on every single day, kind of like going to the gym. If somebody wants your body to look a certain way, you don't meet that objective and then just never work out, never eat right again. It's something that you still work on a little bit every day to keep it fine-tuned, to make sure you stay on track and you're going in that forward momentum instead of falling backwards, because you can go backwards and fall into a fixed mindset later in life if you just give up and stop dreaming, stop, telling yourself positive things. You can start to build those negative habits, just like you can switch it and start to build the positive ones. So
you mentioned earlier that in the, you've had some setbacks and challenges along the way in family health, put your study plans back a little bit as a result. I wonder if you could maybe just talk to, navigating setbacks and life challenges.
When I transitioned out of the military, my plan was to go back to school. And shortly afterwards, my dad, he had me later in life. So I always say my elderly father, and some people get a little bit upset with my age and not understanding his age. So he had me in his 50s. So by this time, he's now in his late 70s, early 80s. by the time I got out of the military, and he became sick. I mean, it's part of life, and in a mindset aspect, I think I always knew that, and I always understood that he was just older than all my other friends' dads, and I always get complimented that I get along very well with elderly people, and I contributed to that just having a father who was older and had me later in life. So anyway, he got sick. Again, it happens later in life a lot of the times, not always, but he got Alzheimer's, and he also got stage 4 cancer. He had Merkel cell carcinoma, which is a type of skin cancer. It's the second leading cause of death behind melanoma. And I was faced with a choice, right? I mean, we all are faced with a choice. I tell the story that I chose, which I did, to take care of him, right? I could have chosen not to, and I could have stayed in school. But for me, in my heart, again, like you asked earlier with the Navy, like, why did you choose that vice going to school? It's just what I felt was right for me. So when I tell this story too, for anyone out there who maybe didn't take care of a loved one and they put them in the care of nurses and whatnot, that's completely acceptable as well, just to caveat this, because I have friends that have done that with loved ones. But for me, I wanted hands-on. Again, I love medicine. And I just thought this was the best thing for my father in this situation. So that's what I did. I moved him in with me. It was a huge learning curve from studying about patients with Alzheimer's and reading about it, and then having my own father have it and just seeing how it is, and, the memory problems and him forgetting things. And I don't want this to come off wrong, but for me, it was fascinating. It was emotional. And I say fascinating because I love the field of study. And to see it again firsthand, day in and day out, I tried to just take my mindset to learn the most from it and say, what can I learn from this situation that I can take forward? And I've read it in books. I've read it in lots of books and journals from other neurologists who've had patients. And I can't think of the book now, but there was one book I never forgot that the physician talked about having to explain to a patient who had Alzheimer's that they were dying. And every day they went back in and the patient forgot. And he had to re-go through this like every day, and just how traumatizing it was for the physician trying to like re-explain it to this poor person. And every day they forgot the conversation that they had. So for me, I got to experience that firsthand of every day, just with simple things about, eating. Like my father would forget that he ate. He was like, you haven't fed me today. And I'm like, oh my goodness, you just ate, breakfast you had. And I would go through what he had and he would completely forget. So when it comes to a mindset of going through a challenge, I would say try to, and it's really hard in the moment. I won't lie to you, right? There were days I would just have to go and like sit by myself. I would be very upset and emotional because it's frustrating to be like, I just had this conversation and you forgot it. But I would challenge you to try and take away the positive. And maybe that day it's a wash and you can't, but the next day try to be like, okay, remind yourself, why are you doing this? Why did you choose to do this? Like, what was your intention behind it? And then look to the future of, this isn't going to be the situation forever, right? I knew I wouldn't take care of him forever. Just that's the nature of the disease. One or the other, something was eventually going to happen. Could it have been a longer period of time? Sure, maybe, it could have also been a shorter period of time. Like, that's just something we don't always have the answers to. Knowing that, and if you can keep yourself grounded in why you chose it, like I said in the beginning, then I think it makes it easier. Or maybe not easier in the moment, but I know looking back, it makes it easier on me to say, yes, that was a struggle, that was a lot, but I learned so much from it. I learned so much about taking care of him. I learned so much about my own resiliency in dealing with the situation and how to deal with somebody. And I don't mean this to sound wrong, so I hope it doesn't sound wrong, but I'm like, if I can take care of my own father who had Alzheimer's, I feel like there's probably no patient that can come, that I can interact with in the future, that it will still be emotional, of course, but I know what I'm getting into, and I'll know how to mentally prepare myself and be like, I'm doing whatever I'm doing, however I'm interacting with them, I'm going to give them my 100%, everything that I can offer them for help. And that's all we can do in life. If you, I believe, give everything, your true intention is to 100% help the person, and do everything that is available right now, right? Because that is another key point. You can't look at yesterday and say this was an option yesterday, because if it's not an option today, it means nothing. Same thing for tomorrow. You don't know what tomorrow is going to bring for options. You just have to be here in the present and say, right now, here in the present, this is what the options are. This is what we can do, and make the best choice then. And truly internalize that in your mindset and saying, right now, and this actually probably ties into the military a little bit, of knowing that right now, this is what's available, because right now is the only reality that you have to make that choice. I can't say, oh no, yesterday I had 3 options, today I only have 2 options. That's not, yesterday's gone, right? So you need to just be present now. And I learned that, I don't say the hard way, but like we had options with cancer for him and for treatment, and then windows were missed and things. And I believe everything worked out, and we just made choices, or I made choices, as quickly as I could with his doctors in the time periods that we had. So,
well, what a story! And thank you so much for sharing. One of the questions I had from a client, a listener recently, was any advice for going through difficult times. The question wasn't specific about what, but it could be family illness, it could be recent bereavement, it might be divorce in the family, something of that nature. And I think you shared some nice things to bear in mind about not being kind on yourself about what's possible in a given day. Tomorrow's fresh start. Are there any other little things that you think are particularly helpful for people to bear in mind when going through a time of serious challenge?
I'll use the example of, for my dad again, with him being sick, and I chose that. So I'm in a bunch of Facebook groups and if anyone out there is a caregiver or knows someone who is, there are endless resources. I know here in the States, we have endless resources. I'm sure across the world there are. Facebook is one. I'm in a whole bunch of groups for other caregivers and people who take care of a loved one with dementia or Alzheimer's. I would say, like, in that situation, I know there's people in the group that I do reach out and talk to. And there are some people that I've met in the group who didn't choose to be the caregiver and feel like they're trapped and just feel like it's a really hard situation with siblings, or some people it's a spouse, right? That's a really hard situation, that their loved one is their spouse that no longer recognizes who they are. Yeah. And I would say for things like that, you still need to, I would say, like, it's a little bit different for everything, right? And I'm just sticking with this story because we just talked about my story a little bit, that you need to, I know it sounds, again, a little bit silly, but you need to focus on like the future of what you want the outcome to be. And in that, though, you need to take care of yourself. That's something I learned really quickly when I took care of my dad, is I wasn't taking care of myself, and I got burnt out and I was tired and I just had no motivation to do anything for a while, for several months, because I was just so exhausted of, the same conversations every single day and cleaning up after him and making meals and just not pouring in my own cup. And you need to figure out what that is, right? Like I've already mentioned, things like going on walks, reading books, doing things that are going to engage your mind. And I try to stay away from recommending people just watching like something like TV or movies, because I personally just don't think that really engages your mind a whole lot. And maybe it depends what you're watching, right? I know I have an aunt that she loves watching The Game Show. I don't know if that's, a global option, but it's like games and quizzes and trivia. And I would argue, okay, maybe that is not too bad for your brain, but other things where you're not really engaging and you're kind of just zoning out from actually thinking or living your life and actually refilling your cup can start, in my opinion, to make you feel worse, right? So I would say that there needs to be something that you find hope for again, that you feel inspired, that you maybe didn't choose this. Like I said, I'll go with the spouse one. For them, your partner having this disease, but trying to find the silver lining to it. Maybe this is your opportunity, if you've had that hobby that you like, painting or something, that maybe you can do that to find an outlet. And I know this is very, very broad, and I apologize because, again, I just think there's so many nuances when it comes to it. Or it could be maybe a student that you just feel like maybe you haven't been doing well in school and you're like, I'm not really sure the way forward. I would challenge you that every day is an opportunity to turn over a new leaf, right? Maybe up until now, you've just been flunking out of school. You're like, oh my goodness, how do I move forward? What do I do? And I would say just challenge yourself and tell yourself, who do you want to be in that person? And then just wake up and start working on that person every single day from then forward. Telling other people, finding the resources then that you need to become that person, right? So with academics, because we talk a lot about study tips, that who do you need to get a tutor? Do you need an academic advisor? Who do you need to talk to your professor? Who do you need in your corner then to say, look, I know I haven't been the best, but I really want to do this. It's in my heart. Can you please help me? Can you guide me on this path so I can succeed? Right? And that's going to start to empower you. But if you think you're in this journey alone, it will feel very lonely. And then it will feel like the weight of the world is on you and you don't have any options. And that's not the truth. People, we are very social creatures, people. So like we love sharing information and teaching other people. And it goes both ways. So if you find somebody else that you connect with and sharing information and learning from them, they're going to pour into you as much as you want to be poured into.
There's some great advice. So, difficult times, remember your why, cultivate that sense of community, find that support network, treat every day as a new opportunity to make things better. Make sure you carve out time for yourself along the way. And then I think that point about, who do you want to be, like that goes beyond just challenging times, doesn't it? And that's, for anybody who's falling a little bit short of where they think they want to be performing at, how can you get there? Who do you need to talk to? Who do you need to become, and how are you going to get there? Once you start asking those questions, I think as you were pointing out much earlier in our conversation, those answers start to come through, don't they? Yeah. Erika, once again, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a really enjoyable conversation. Thank you so much for inspiring us, for the tips along the way. Where can we go to learn more about you and your work?
Sure. So I point most people to my Instagram. That's where I'm the most active on there. So it's _Erika Grace, and Erika is ERIKA. Grace is GRACE.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much once again, and very best wishes with the rest of the course.
If you've got exams coming up, you can now get all of William's favourite tips and tricks to save you time and get you higher grades, all in one handy cheat sheet. Grab your copy at examstudyexpert.com/free tips. Thanks again for listening, and see you soon.